Hey y'all, welcome back to Anchored Soul. I'm your host Allie, and I'm so excited to be here with you guys today for another episode and be in the same time zone. I am in Indiana right now visiting my mom to help her out after her surgery. So today I want to talk about Exodus 14:14, and this is what it says. It says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." So, to give a little bit of context about what's happening here, the Israelites are finally free from slavery. They've escaped Egypt, and they're making their way through the desert, but they are currently being chased by Pharaoh's army. So they're trapped with the Red Sea on one side of them and the army coming after them on the other side. And that's when Moses says this to them. And they thought that they were, like at this point, they think they're out of options. They think that this is the end. Like, why would you bring us out of slavery just for this to be it kind of situation? And they started to panic. And honestly, like, I feel like we've all had a Red Sea moment when we panic and when a situation feels like it's impossible. Like you feel stuck or you feel like there's no obvious solution. When the anxiety is loud or the pressure feels really heavy. Like those I feel like are Red Sea moments when we just, we feel like we're out of answers. We feel like we are just out of luck. And this is it. Like, this is the end of the road. But Moses responds with this, starting in verse 13. He says, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." So that's verses 13 and 14. And I want to talk about this today because I feel like a lot of times being still feels impossible. It feels like it's an impossible task. And I feel like this would have been one of those situations. Like, I literally have an army coming after me and a sea that I cannot cross on the other side of me. So you're asking me to be still and basically let this army catch up to me and kill me. It's like signing a death sentence, I guess I've always taken this as like literally be still, like stand still, do not move, do not do anything. But here's then now what I've started to understand. Being still doesn't mean do nothing. It means don't panic. Don't try to control the situation. It means trusting that God is working even when we don't see the movement of Him working. So being still is trusting God. And another thing that stood out to me in this verse is the use of Lord. Lord in this verse is spelled capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. And this is, when it's spelled in all caps like that, it's referring to God's sacred name, Yahweh, or YHWH. And it signifies a personal relationship between God and His children. I think it's really helpful, like since I learned that, I think that it's really helpful to notice that when you're reading, because I feel like it kind of changes the tone a little bit sometimes of the passage that you're reading. God is such a big God, and He does a lot of big things. But I feel like when I see that personal name, it just makes things feel a little bit more like a father to son interaction kind of thing. It just feels more personal. It feels more like a parent sitting you down and saying, "Listen, I've got this. You need to trust me. So I think that that's important to point out and recognize when you're reading the Bible. So I don't know what your Red Sea looks like right now. I mean, maybe it's something that you've been praying about for a really long time and you're just not seeing the answers. You know, maybe it's a relationship or something in a relationship that you're struggling with. Maybe it's financial stress, maybe it's anxiety or depression. Anything that feels so big and feels impossible to overcome, that could be a Red Sea moment in your life. And I think that it's important to remember that it doesn't mean that we're not going to face battles. It means that we're not going to fight them alone. And actually, I think it's saying that we don't have to fight them at all. We just have to trust that God will fight them for us. And, you know, God goes before you and beyond you and beside you and all around you. I don't remember what that song is, but that is a song. And we don't have to fight. We don't have to fight them. And even if we do have to do a little bit of fighting, we don't have to fight them alone. We will never be walking alone through any situation, good or bad. And little side note, I know that this has been kind of a theme of my videos lately, but I just feel like this topic is something that God is laying so heavy on my heart right now. And, you know, I feel like in my own life, but also in people's lives that I've talked to, you know, I think all of my friends that I've talked to recently, my family, literally everybody, I feel like this is something that needs to be talked about. I feel like we're all kind of going through some big things, walking through some big things, and struggling with those big things. So I know that this has been a common theme, but I'm going to stick with it until I feel like God's saying, okay, you can move on now. Because I just think it's important to follow what he wants me to talk about. So, and maybe it's because this is so prevalent in my life right now too, but I really feel like it's because of that, but also because it can help other people that I've talked to recently. So, okay, back to the story. So what happens next is where the story turns around for the Israelites. So it's not because they figured out a solution or fought back and won, but it's because God moved. God commanded Moses to stretch out his hand, and the sea parted. There was a wall of water on each side, and they were able to just walk through. And then when Pharaoh's army came through, the water collapsed back on them, and so the Israelites were safe from Pharaoh's army. And this is, you know, obviously it is a miraculous act of God, but I think that it's important to see here that sometimes the biggest act of faith isn't striving on your own, it's surrendering it to God. Like, the Israelites could have tried to run somehow, some way to get away from the army. They could have tried to fight back. They would have lost, probably. But they could have tried to fight back. They could have, I don't know, I feel like done a number of different things, right? They could have figured it out. They could have put their heads together to try to figure out a way to get out of that sticky situation. But in reality, what they needed to do is just surrender to God. Surrender their lives, surrender their will, and just let God take control. When I think of that, I think of this video by, what is her name? She's the Get Your Pink Back girl. She's a influencer. can't think of her name. She has this video where she's like in the passenger seat and it says point of view and you let God take the wheel or something like that. And it's like, oh, didn't you want to turn there? You know, that's the fastest way. And she's trying to like backseat drive essentially. And then eventually, you know, she's like, oh, no, okay, you got it. You're right. You know best. And I think about that sometimes because I just think that's very real, you know, like if that was me, if I was in that situation and God was literally driving my car and I knew, you know, it's a path that I've taken every single day for years or something. And I'd be like, you really should turn there because you're going to avoid XYZ, or it's the fastest way. It's a shortcut. Why wouldn't you turn there? But in reality, we just have to let God take control. And He's going to get us there in the best possible way. So my question is, how can we work on this in today's world? How can we work on surrendering in today's world and practice being still when our world is moving at such a fast pace and constantly moving at such a fast pace? So here's a few ways that I'm going to try to put this into practice, and I would challenge you to maybe try out some of them as well. One thing I'm going to do is pause before reacting. So when I want to, you know, say something out of hurt feelings or anger or whatever it is, I'm going to pause first and I'm going to think about how I should react versus how I want to react, and listen to how God is telling me to react. I'm going to pray before spiraling into a what if scenario that I make up in my head. I'm really bad about making up things in my head. Like, even if I know I have to have a conversation with somebody and maybe it's kind of a hard conversation or one that I don't really want to have, I try to play out every scenario in my head. Like, I try to go through the conversation to prepare myself for every possible reaction that they could have or every possible response that they could have. And that usually tends to make me spiral into this fit of anxiety. Because then I'm like, okay, well, what if they react this way? Or what if they react this way? Or what if I haven't thought about how they're going to react? And then I'm unprepared for what's going to happen. And it always ends up being fine. But it's just the way that my mind works. So I'm going to try to pray before I let things like that happen. And let the Lord lead me in whatever it is. It's not always conversations, but just whatever the situation is. Let the Lord lead me. I'm going to try to worship before worry. So anytime I start to feel worried about something, I'm going to worship God instead. And that doesn't necessarily mean music. I feel like worship is associated with music. And it is, but it also could just be like talking through my blessings or saying things that I'm grateful for, or saying like, God, you're in control. I know that you're in control. I know that you will make this situation what it's meant to be. I trust your will. I trust your way. Lead me in this. And then lastly, I'm going to practice reminding myself who God truly is, even though I may not be able to see him working. And for me, that looks like, I feel like I'm really good about saying things like, there's a reason for everything. If it wasn't meant to happen, then it wouldn't happen. Or if it was meant to happen, then it would happen. I feel like I'm really good about saying things like that, but I'm not very good at like sitting down and looking at different ways that like God is actually sovereign in my life, in the Bible, in other people's lives. And when I see those ways, I always have the feeling of, what am I worried about? What am I stressing out about? Because God is sovereign and He's in control and He is all powerful and all knowing. So I might not be able to see it happening with my own eyes, but I feel like when I sit down and think about the ways that He works and who He truly is, whether it's just thinking about it or praying about it or reading about it, I feel like that will help me to just be still in moments of panic and of chaos, and see what what solution He has, or what the next step is. I think being still it sounds like a non-active thing, but being still is an active choice. And like anything, it takes practice and perseverance to perfect. So it's something that I'm going to challenge myself with, and I hope that you choose to challenge yourself with it too. And during that challenge, remember, well, even if you don't challenge yourself with it, remember that you're not alone. God's in it with you, and He's going to fight for you. He's always there. There's never a time that He leaves our side. So that's really all I have today. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope you have a great week. And I love y'all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.